Jake Fischer reports what Coby White may be looking for in next season's free agency. And are the Bulls still interested in Jonathan Kuminga? We'll get right into all that and plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Whole Lotta Bull. I'm Troy. You can follow me on Twitter at Whole Lotta Bull, or you can follow me personally if you like at Bulls_Troy. All right, so Jake Fischer, who we know is not the most reliable of sources out there in the NBA insider world, but he's come out with a couple of reports, and now the first one being what Coby White's potential free agency demands will be for next season. Now, obviously, we're probably fully aware that Coby White has rejected any negotiations or will probably reject any potential extension negotiations before hitting the unrestricted free agency market next offseason. Now, if he was to sign a contract extension this season before heading into unrestricted free agency next year, he can only get a salary increase of 140% of his current salary, which is like $13 million this coming season. And so 140% of that, you're probably looking about 18, $19 million a year. Whereas if he hits unrestricted free agency, Coby White could be looking at anywhere from $30 to $40 million a season. So, and that's the report that has that Jake Fischer is saying that Coby White's going to be looking for over $30 million a year next season when he becomes an unrestricted free agent. And I think they based that off of what Josh Giddey got with his $25 million AAV contract that he just signed only a matter of days ago. So if the Bulls do want to keep Coby White, it does appear that they're going to have to ante up with their contract negotiations. Now, unlike the free agency market this offseason, where there was essentially no cap space around in the league, only the Brooklyn Nets had cap space for this year. And they made it perfectly clear that they definitely weren't going after any restricted free agents, but they weren't going to be targeting any big names out there on the market. Hence why they never made an offer towards Josh Giddey. But also, as we know that with Josh Giddey signing that $25 million a year contract, it definitely seems more likely that Coby White is going to be wanting a contract larger than that, pushing over $30 million a year. Now that's a decision where the Chicago Bulls and Arturas Karnisovas need to come to and decide, is Coby worth $30 million or more? Now there's a lot of Bulls fans out there that are very skeptic about, is a backcourt of Josh Giddey and Coby White worth X amount of dollars? Now, in this case, if we go to the $30 million, that's going to be a $55 million a year backcourt. And obviously, there's a lot of questions on roster constructions. That is this a backcourt that you can win games with and compete for a real playoff position, not just getting to the play-in tournament and making it through the play-in? Can you actually advance past the play-in tournament and make the playoffs, or can you actually finish the season in a 6 or better position? So that's a decision that Chicago needs to come to, period. Now, some of the other reporting that Jake Fischer has put out there as well, which Sports Illustrated have put an article on, is that the Bulls may still be interested in pursuing Jonathan Kuminga. Now, I'm not really sure how this is potentially going to work as far as getting Kuminga to Chicago. Now, I don't have a subscription to Jake Fisher's Substack, where I believe it's with Mark Stein. I'm sorry, I'm just not paying for stuff that's behind a paywall that not doing it. So, hey, if I'm gonna miss out on information, so be it. It is what it is. So I'm not sure what the exact details of a potential trade for Jonathan Kuminga is. Now, I would assume you'd probably be looking at sending Coby White to the Golden State Warriors in return for Jonathan Kuminga. Now, I believe on a restricted free agency, only half. Now, reports are Jonathan Kuminga is wanting a $30 million deal himself. Apparently, he's reportedly turned down a 2 year, $45 million deal with the Golden State Warriors, with a, I believe, had a team option in it. He's rejected that, and it seems very likely if he's going to do anything, he's going to accept the qualifying offer with the Golden State Warriors. I believe it's about $7 million a year, and get into unrestricted free agency next season. So where do the Bulls come into this? Well, it's been reported for a while that the Bulls have been interested in Jonathan Kuminga. It seems that Kuminga has some interest in actually joining the Bulls. Now, how would it work? Now, Coby White's contract this season, if Jonathan Kuminga was to sign, I know someone like Hayes can completely correct me on this if I'm getting anything wrong here. And like Doug Tonis, you guys are great with the salary cap and all that sort of stuff. Jonathan Kuminga's or incoming salary, however it works with restricted free agency sign and trades, is that only half his base salary is can be used in a trade negotiation. That's why Coby White's expiring contract of $13 million probably fits in with around that mark of what Jonathan Kuminga is actually going to get paid, whether potentially 25 to $30 million a year, being at 30 million. Coby White being at $13 million, so you're looking at $26 million there. Not completely sure if that's how it works, but I'm guessing it's around that sort of ballpark. And again, Hayes and Doug Tonis, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. But in saying that, I'm still not a fan of bringing in Jonathan Kuminga in any shape or form. Now, yes, the guy is very athletic, can score in bunches, and was supposed to be one of these very young, like possibly supposed to be part of this next generation of the Golden State Warriors. Him and Moses Moody in that draft when the Warriors had that down year with like Klay Thompson was out injured, Kevin Durant left, Steph Curry broke his hand and he missed a big chunk of the season. Or I believe actually it was at the James Wiseman draft. Whether they're all in the same draft, can't quite remember, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, there was supposed to be this whole new progression of Golden State Warriors coming through, and Kuminga and Moses Moody was supposed to be the lead of that. But obviously, Kuminga has felt unloved, unwanted by the Warriors, and he obviously feels like should have a much larger role in that team than what he does. But I'm sorry, when you still got Steph Curry and now you've brought in Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, being the personality he is, Kuminga, you're gonna have to if you're gonna stay in Golden State, which it seems like he wants out of there completely. But if he was to stay, he's gonna have to bide his time and wait for Steph and Jimmy and Dre to leave. And that's obviously where he thinks that there's a potential there for him in Chicago, being a young core. Maybe he feels like if he came to Chicago, he gets to be the guy offensively, and maybe it could potentially work out for him here in Chicago, but he still leaves a lot to be desired defensively. I personally haven't seen from him anything that resembles a decent defender, and we already know that we're already lacking in perimeter defense. Now, Josh Giddey's still got to work on his defense. Coby White's got to be better defensively. Marcus Buzelis, as he develops, we can block shots, but how's he going to go perimeter defense one on one? But Jonathan Kuminga, as we've seen throughout his short career so far, can definitely fill up the stat sheet with his scoring. Now, if he was to come to Chicago, he probably fits in, or he would probably demand he fits in as the number one option. And personally, I'd rather just keep Coby White over Jonathan Kuminga. That's my opinion on that one. I don't want Jonathan Kuminga in a Bulls uniform. Now, if at some point down the line, Kuminga, like anyone else, was to become a Chicago Bull, of course I'm gonna support him. Of course I'm gonna want the best for him. That's just how I am as a Bulls fan. I support the guys that are in my jersey. I'm not, and yes, I'm gonna get shitty at players. I've been shitty at Vooch. I've been shitty at Coby White in the past. Yes, I've been shitty at Josh Giddey. To surprise some of you who think I'm nothing but a Josh Giddey stan. Hey, he's had games where he's pissed me off too. I'm good on Jonathan Kuminga, but hey, if he ends up being in Chicago, I'll definitely support the guy. But as far as trading for him, I'm not in favor at whatsoever. All right, last topic before I head off for today. The Chicago Bulls have named 6 more Chicago Bulls legends to join the Ring of Honor class in 2025. Those being assistant coach Johnny Bock, former center and head coach Bill Cartwright, longtime play-by-play announcer Neil Funk, and also former couple players from the first three-peat in Horace Grant and John Paxson, also the former GM, and Stormin Norman Van Leer. So obviously, this is something that the Bulls, when they first announced the Ring of Honor, this is something they're going to do every, I believe, it was 2 to 3 years. And it's great to see that these guys are now getting put into the Ring of Honor. Obviously, you can't retire everyone's jersey. The Chicago Bulls have made it clear that they don't retire jerseys. I think they've probably, also we're getting Derrick Rose's jersey retired this coming season. Now, whether that's just come from a bit of a public push from Bulls fans, or whether maybe this is something they generally wanted to do, but we do know that, hey, even once D Rose's jersey goes up in the rafters, there's only 5 numbers up on the rafters: Rose, Sloan, Love, Jordan, Pippen. But now we get to see more names go into the Ring of Honor, which they first created in the 2023-24 season. Now that inaugural class, excuse me, had Artis Gilmore, Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, Johnny Redker, Dick Klein, Jerry Krause, Tony Kukoc, Bob Love, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Jerry Sloan, Chet Walker, Tex Winter, the 72 and 10 95, 96 Chicago Bulls that won the title. Still the greatest team of all time. I'm sorry, the 73 win Warriors were great. You didn't win the title. You are completely out of the discussion of greatest team of all time. You 73 wins is great. 72 has a better ring to it. And yeah, that ring right there against the Seattle Sonics back in '96. What a team that was! But the contributions made by these guys, Johnny Buck being an assistant coach, I believe he was here throughout Phil Jackson's entire stint here, obviously with like Tex Winter as well. Uh, Bill Cartwright, I mean, you have, Bill Cartwright was a bit before my time watching, before I got to actually start watching the Chicago Bulls. The first game I ever watched of Chicago was in the 95-96 season. I mean, I was already a Bulls fan. Well, before that, I became a Bulls fan in 1994. Now, for those who don't know the story of how I became a Chicago Bulls fan, growing up in Perth over in Western Australia, basically there was 3 team logos or merchandise that you used to see around: Chicago, Los Angeles Lakers, and the Charlotte Hornets. And primarily, I just like the look of that bull more than the Lakers and the Hornets. So that's how the Bulls became my team. And now, obviously, a lot of people in the past have become Bulls fans because of, you grew up in the 90s, you were Michael Jordan fans. Or if come in the late, like in the 2010s, you because of Derrick Rose. Well, me, it was because that logo. I got into playing basketball when I was 8 years old, and these were the NBA logos I was seeing: Chicago, Lakers, Hornets. that Bull was, the best looking of them. That's how Chicago became my team. But yeah, Bill Cartwright come obviously well before my time, but, I've seen different videos, watched old games. Definitely had that old man game. Used to throw those elbows around. Stacey King has told a few stories on, the Gimme the Hot Sauce podcast about Bill Cartwright and, Neil Funk as well. Now I didn't get to witness much of Neil Funk as a play-by-play announcer. Now, again, for my own because of my own personal circumstances, I didn't start watching every single Bulls game until the first year we had Zach LaVine, when this is when I got league pass. Now I saw games that were broadcast on ESPN that were over here in Australia, but there was maybe like then during the Derrick Rose era, there was maybe 4 games a season, 5 games throughout the course of the season where I got to watch the Bulls. Um, and then during after that, after the Jordan era, there was nothing. So, and obviously back then I didn't have league pass personally, so only got to listen to Neil Funk for a couple of years there, but and it's been great when he's come back for Derrick Rose night last season against the Knicks. It was great to see him back on the broadcast, and who knows, maybe we get to see him again on the call at some point as well. And obviously we got Storm and Norman Van Leer. Well, obviously well before my time. He was played before I was even born. But and he's another Bulls player in the past that some people believe that the number 2 should be hanging up on the rafters. Some people have this thing where they believe the number 2 is cursed. Now, we've seen players that have come over recent years, with Lonzo Ball and Nate Robinson and some other players that have copped injuries and some serious injuries while wearing the number 2 for Chicago. So hence why they think the number 2 is cursed. But hey, it should number 2 being up in the rafters at the United Center. Drop a comment down below if you believe Van Leer's numbers should be up there. And obviously Horace Grant and John Paxson, part of the first three-peat. Now, when they actually get to the Ring of Honor night, I do sincerely hope when it comes to John Paxson, you celebrate the player, not the GM. Because I know, and hey, he was actually a pretty decent GM for a long period of time, basically up until he brought Gar Forman along. But when John Paxson was the one really running the show, even looking from afar and not being able to really watch much, but looking back at those teams, John Paxson did a pretty decent job as a general manager. But then Gar Forman came along and slowly everything turned to shit. And John Paxson quickly realized that he couldn't do the job anymore. And then he finally told Jerry Reinsdorf, "Hey, get someone else in here and do the job." And I believe he actually tried to do it before, and Jerry Reinsdorf wouldn't hear of it and said, "No, you're the man for the job. Keep going." But again, when it comes to the Ring of Honor night, unlike what the fans at the United Center did with Jerry Krause and booing his name while his widow was there, which was absolutely disgusting. I hope Bulls fans that are there at the UC can celebrate John Paxson, the player. And yes, he's probably going to be in the Ring of Honor for his time as the general manager as well. But he was part of our first repeat. Hit a game winning shot against Phoenix in '93 to help seal the championship. So please, Bulls fans, do the right thing this time and celebrate everyone that's going in there. You may have a dislike for John Paxson, the GM. Put that aside for a night. And something that now shout out to Hayes again. He mentioned this in the Whole Lotta Bull Discord. Now again, I'll drop an invite link down below in the description if anyone wants to join the Discord. But what he is an interesting topic on. Okay, while we've got this class going in for this coming season, the next Ring of Honor class, who are we potentially looking at bringing in? Who will be inducted straight off the bat? Derrick Rose. Now, yes, his jersey is going up in the rafters this season, but when it comes time for the Ring of Honor, Derrick Rose. Luol Deng, Joakim Noah. And as much as there's been some tension between the franchise and a certain former coach, but Tom Thibodeau should definitely be part of the ring on it as well, because that was probably the potentially the second best era of Chicago Bulls basketball, maybe the best era of Chicago Bulls basketball outside of the Jordan era. Because we have Derrick Rose, the youngest MVP in league history. Tom Thibodeau, outside of Phil Jackson, is our best ever coach. Luol Deng and Joakim Noah, heart and soul of the Chicago Bulls franchise, and absolutely beloved by Bulls fans. And there's an argument to make that whether Joakim Noah should have number 13 put up in the rafters as well. Unfortunately, I don't see that part happening, but hey, I'm not opposed to number 13 being up in the rafters for Joakim Noah as well. And the guy won a Defensive Player of the Year. He came fourth in MVP voting, where he created the point center role. So there's definitely some argument as to why, and it's not just what Joakim Noah did on the court for Chicago; it's what he did in the in the Chicago community uh, in general. For a guy who came from, I believe, it was the Bronx in New York, what Chicago meant to Joakim Noah, what Chi- what Joakim Noah meant to Chicago, not just as a Chicago Bull, but as a man, as a member of the Chicago community. That can play another big reason as to why Joe's number should also be hanging up on the rafters. But there's a lot of people out there, namely people like Joe Cowley, who think that, hey, unless you won a title, you shouldn't get jack shit. There's no reason why your numbers should be hanging up on the rafters. Well, there's a lot of players out there who didn't win NBA titles whose numbers are hanging up in rafters. So winning a championship shouldn't be what defines a player getting the jersey retired. So if anyone wants to say that, honestly, you can shut the fuck up. All right, so congratulations to those guys that are going into the Bulls Ring of Honor, and then again in the next 2 or 3 years when the next batch comes along, be very interesting to see who gets in there. But for as far as I'm concerned, like Hayes said in the Whole Lotta Ball Discord, Derrick Rose, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, Tom Thibodeau should all be locks to for the Ring of Honor in the next group. All right, guys. That's going to do it for this edition of the Whole Lotta Bull episode. Don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter at Bulls_Troy. Follow the show at Whole Lotta Bull. Like and subscribe to the channel helps us out a lot in growing the channel and getting it around to more Bulls fans can to help discover it. So, until next time, Bulls fans, see red, be good.